have it in our models tool belt. That's, trying to put it that way. In machine learning, we have what's called ensemble modeling. Like you let the algorithm learn from data, right? And actually create the model from data. But depending on how we look at the data, we create different models. And when you then ensemble those models, again, you get a much better understanding, a model that fits much better but doesn't overfit, etc. So that's my thinking, that we should definitely, especially anyone who's contributing here, feels strongly about a model we should use, investigate, make use of. Um, Definitely also put or wanted to put that on the agenda as well. That's number
Yeah.
one. Personally, this bottom of the pyramid, I feel you uh, so much. I mean, I went into this whole part of the rabbit holes or tunnels because of a project, the Sun Protocol. It was about bringing solar trainers in sub-Saharan Africa, and Africa Green Tech, the company, a a social enterprise, are doing it successfully through crowdfunding, etc. But they're really embedded. And when we were devising how we could use fundraising through tokenization to create more liquid and bigger funding pools for those ambitions that they had, it really became very clear to me that people who aren't like me, I'm here in Munich and I know my part, especially back then, only the tech part, right? Um, like mm, dictating, if you will, a reward system that optimizes for one outcome that we deem is desirable. That's where this whole ethical and legitimacy issues came up for me, and what you are proposing is the biggest one. And in the latest ecosystem airflows cohort, actually, there was a participant who, I'm always calling for, check your assumptions, bias, and, for this open-mindedness and also for this questioning, gathering all participants' assumptions and views and so on. And he basically was saying, why don't you let the participants own their own assumptions? And he gave me this book, and I think I shared it with you as well in Token Engineering, the Telegram channel, Who Owns Poverty. And I thought that was
Yes.
this extremely participatory approach, right? Enabling approach, and especially not coming in with with our problem solving, especially from token engineering, like this technical side, right? It's a problem, and you have a problem solution fit. It's an optimization problem. I got an algorithm and enough data to figure this out. I think that's kind of the scienticism of token engineering that we want to not ignore. Um, And with respect to like grassroots economics, yes, I mean, you know, um, they're really out there for over 10 years. They've been doing so. They know
Yeah.
the domain very, very well. They did it before on paper. They used low bandwidth mobile data, right? And they have the best repository out there. I personally always point to for people who want to understand what tools we use and how it's really tidied up repository on system modeling. So
I actually have a call with
yes.
them next week with
Hmm.
Shaila, which is the director of business development, and I
Hmm.
have a call with them next week. I'm going to actually present them something although it's not the capability, it's something that I've been conceptualizing that seeks to alleviate poverty by creating jobs, but doing it in a way that is profitable, so that we do not have to rely on philanthropy or on altruistic individuals, but actually we can instrumentalize the greed, for lack of a better word, of people, or the rent-seeking behavior, which is natural. I mean, it's completely natural. So yeah, I'll present them, and actually I can use that to inform the presentation that I'd like to present on the capabilities approach on our next Omega call 2 weeks from now. So we can keep the conversation going there, and I feel I've kidnapped enough of the meeting, so I'll pass back to you, Solcista, so that we can start with the agenda.
Okay. Okay, everyone joined. I hope that's okay. Can you see my screen, everyone? I just
Yes,
wanted
it's
to
showing
add
good.
here. Like, I don't know if possibly not everyone participated. So we had this focus group of around 8 token engineers from various perspectives, backgrounds, and not just technical, but also from the art community, creator community. And we put down some issues that are recurring, not many, but I think so 3 areas, situations, if you will, that emerge where you need to make a decision or decide for something, knowing that it's not 0-1, right, wrong, or even you don't know a perfect solution yet, but still you want to be able to experiment, to gather data, and so on. So, and we had the second get together last Wednesday, where we also had someone who is active researcher in ethics and philosophy, who basically said, well, I'm interested in how you guys are handling it, and basically at the end of the analysis gave the input. And I think, for example, Nathan actually put it forward, and that was the takeaway from that is, okay, now that we basically validated our initial patterns, that we saw that decision making in this complex network, human coordination in a socioeconomic technical system that is new from all aspects, right? That we basically need to have, or practically a good goal would be for us to come up with a framework or a composition or synthesis of frameworks that helps token engineers or participants in token and economies make the best possible decision, construct the best possible solution with their current knowledge of the environment. More or less, like we said, leave this wiggle space. And for that, what basically Manu entered in is that we know there are a few frameworks that we wanted to analyze. And basically, what we could do is, we have this situation, and what can those frameworks help us with? See clearer or make better decisions, or more informed or more participatory decisions in such situations. Maybe not every framework will fit in all those 3 areas, but maybe one framework will fit perfectly for one area, and that would be also good to know. So, for example, Manu, can you say cognitive how do you, the capabilities models, right?
Capabilities approach
Approach.
by Amartya Sen, um,
Okay, I'm
economics
just
note. Yeah.
Manu. So basically saying that we would be preparing those, and the two others were Sinifin and I guess Regis, if he changed the times, would prepare this for us. He inputted it very early on, and the earliest one we've been into is this the interface, or sorry, an interface to
I
moral
have
philosophy.
I
Mhm.
have another one.
Yeah.
When the another one would be applied Indian ethics. Is another one that I'm happy to share. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Cool.
capabilities approach is more with it deals with distributive justice and how access
Mm-hmm.
to how freedom is evaluated through individual capabilities, functionings, and the access
Mm-hmm.
to certain type of resources and assets, not
Mm-hmm.
not accurately by GDP, which is what we've
Mm-hmm.
been using, and
Mm-hmm.
so that one is more with freedom and justice, however
Mm-hmm.
complex and nuanced that definition is. And applied Indian ethics would be more specifically by ethics as distilled through Indian culture and cosmology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like. Yeah, okay. So, and Cinefin maybe also basically is about there aren't just only best practices when things are simple, known, right? Known. And then there are other quadrants and basically emerging practices and how do we get there when things are complex, evolving, dynamic, and so on. And basically, I would say practice finding, maybe. So, um, I would use so, and interface to moral philosophy is worldviews. Just acknowledging that there are different worldviews, and depending on where you're at, um, you need to have an understanding of your worldview, like what are your values. I found that very difficult, but there are some helpers to get started. And then also by going through that yourself, you create an more not empathy, but an understanding of how to listen for the worldview of others, and that your belief systems is actually defining how you value things, how you make decisions, and so on. So um, that's and I want to ask one more. That was 1 second. Sorry, Gis. Gis had something. Maybe he will also mm, um, how do you call it? Contribute. So basically, um, that would be this focus group analysis. I think 3 to 4 situations of situations, dilemmas that we identified. How can these models help? And through going that through that, I'm assuming we might see similarities within models. Across models, we might see things that are super practical. Um, what what will also help is to make those 3, 4 situations, dilemmas, um, almost caricature like. That the main points or patterns, main patterns are really um, visible, understandable, and if then Manu, Regis, and I will definitely prepare, you know, It could be interactive, it could be a presentation, um, and somehow make that applicable, or really think about how the group that participates in that sessions learns how to apply that model in those situations or in one of those situations. I think that will be super practical set of sessions. Um, yeah, that was basically it
I
for
wanted
TE
to,
ethics. Mhm,
so I wanted to say, like, I really like the idea of having descriptive models for kind of ethical decision making. I think, descriptive models are kind of the ones that we always encounter through our day-to-day interactions, how we make ethical
mhm,
decisions in our day-to-day. But they
mhm,
provide an important foundation for like the development of prescriptive models. So like if we could figure out a way
mhm,
to, even if it's just starting off with a small group of like describing some ethical dilemmas that we encounter throughout our interactions in DAOs, because it is such a new space, there's not a lot of
mhm, mhm,
descriptive scenarios that we have
mm,
documented. And so I think if we could
mhm.
figure out a way to document those and really get some of and see what are most popular, I
Mhm.
think it'd be a really cool start on that.
Okay, perfect. That was what I meant when I think, when saying actually describing the situation, making that a model, a pattern that can be recognized. Am I in this situation? Or do you mean something else?
No, that's exactly what I mean.
Okay.
I really appreciate that. Sorry. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Perfect. So, and I think that would be really a valuable exchange in this group, and we can also record or invite more people. I don't know, but that would be super valuable to put together. Perfect. Good. Then, yeah, other than that, that would be the utilization of the focus group one analysis would be perfect. Then we have other topics, and there basically is more about who to invite, dates, invite text, etc. I think um, maybe I would suggest a separate working sesh for this, I guess, because all of a sudden we have so many things and interesting things in my view to do that we definitely can move to weekly sessions, right? And maybe have some more additional to handle the coordination stuff. So if anyone is interested in reviewing the topics that we had and people who were part of focus group one and have feedback of how we could improve it in the next focus groups, would be great if you join that working session. With that, I think if does anyone want to add some more to this the ethics point? If not, we can go to the Consilience project, and I know that Matt looked into it. So, Matt, do you want to share just also with it's great to have fresh eyes and what you think about how we go about it until now, and any ideas, directions you see worthwhile.
Like I can share, I can summarize some of my thoughts which I wrote in Omega chat.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
maybe, sorry, I will open it. A moment, please. So first of all, I believe it's a very important task to build a like concrete, good library to study interdisciplinary token engineering. because like there's a lot of discussion about postmodernism and how these data, like abundance of data, sometimes bring epistemologic problems to us. So I think if we have like concrete good library, it will be very beneficial. And since I'm very new in space actually, so as I really agree with your point that in this space is generally mostly occupied by like computer scientists and mostly like hard sciences, but actually there's a lot to do in economic side or like sociology side and all other disciplines. So that's my first point. Like I think it's a really good task, first of all. Secondly, like I introduced Foucaultian concept of power and knowledge. So we are trying to build a bunch of knowledge, right? So, but while we are producing knowledge, we should think about that its relationship between power structures and knowledge. So, the Foucaultian thought of how knowledge has some social power, like social control power. For example, I wrote in chat just now. For example, we can see in the era of scientific racism, all the universities today we adhere, like Harvard, Yale, etc., we're working about how race is related to IQ, how some races are more clever, so they have to do doctor jobs, etc. Some like Middle Easterns, Africans should do other crew jobs because they are stronger and lack of cleverness. So even there, we can see how these kind of power relations affect how we produce knowledge. So first, I want to clarify myself. Letty did a good criticism, I believe. I don't say that these kind of power structures, effect of knowledge, lead us to think that there's no ethical decision. That's all about power, etc. No, I don't believe that. I believe in order to create, let's say, more ethical knowledge, we should deal with these kind of power structures, like these kind of dominant paradigms. So, about tech library, my first point is that we should incorporate these points actually to our like narrative, because at the end we want people to engage with our material. As much as people engage, it will be better for us. So we can specify like how this open nature of knowledge is important for like fighting, let's say, with those established paradigms. Like I quoted Aaron Schwartz, one of my hero, like the world's entire scientific heritage is increasingly being digitalized and locked up by a handful of private corporations. Like, for example, I'm going university now, I can reach like GStore, Wiley's Library, etc. But actually, this is common heritage of humanity. But when I graduated from university, I won't have access to those knowledge. And for example, each essay is like $100. So I can never.
Yes, exactly.
So
I miss my access.
Yeah, that's so this one point of open resource should be part of our narrative. And the second part is that so we wanna, as Sebnem noted in her like comments in library document, we wanna create an ethical library, not just a bunch of knowledge. So there's second point, like how we can create this kind of ethical library. As I mentioned, Foucault, knowledge has some social control power, and we don't want to give it to, let's say, unethical, like I'm caricaturizing, but like evil businessmen. So we want to create something, let's say, ethical. So how can we do that? It's I think good discussion topic, because it's a very good old philosophical question, like ethics for who, like which ethics is better, etc. But at that point, Sebnem actually did very good criticism. Like, for example, I said reputation point, but I couldn't express myself very well. Like, what I mean from reputation point is like totally democratically giving reputation points to anybody. Like, not if you are professor from Harvard, you will have like more reputation, etc. like, because as I note, in the 50s,
Mm-hmm.
people from Harvard were working on how some races have better IQ, etc. So at that point, actually, we should think about like how to implement some ethical, let's say, standards to promote more ethical knowledge producing. One way I believe would be like fully democratic reputation points. Like everybody will have some point. For example,
Mm-hmm.
let's say a guy who's a construction worker just happened to know DAOs and crypto space. He just wanted to create a curation for how he entered
Yeah.
DAOs. So he built a five uh, five essays for his creation. Then we saw it and we looked at, for example, it says, oh, this is how I get into DAOs. I think it's best way to get in DAOs. It's easier for most of the stuff going out in internet. So we just happen to look at. So we look, it's really easy, and how he creates is wise and beneficial to people.
Mm-hmm.
As a
Mm-hmm.
voter, I will give full reputation point this kind of
Yeah.
knowledge. So I think we should not frame our reputation, etc., to credential like
Perfect.
this kind of stuff, but let's say more democratic and things. But at that point, you can say it will be a tyranny of majority. But we should think about somehow can deal with it. Maybe we can
Mm-hmm.
make Sebnem or someone as like benevolent dictator or something like. But I think it's very fruitful to discuss this kind of like knowledge building, because for example, when Sebnem, the last words of my, sorry, I talk a lot, when Sebnem sent me
No, go ahead.
like commented, Sebnem sent me the library and commented, I was like thinking about at the very beginning, I think like, okay, there will be a library, but what's the difference of this library to compare to, for example, let's say New York Public Library? What's the point of creating this library? So, of course, it is multidisciplinary. That's one point of it, and it's like free open source. And the point, if it is like, let's say, quote unquote, more ethical, it will be awesome. Like it's like Library Genesis upgraded. So I think we can discuss on that track.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool. So, first of all, I think that's the one. That's the one thing, right? Um, we started in very early also in this group was like, who is a token engineer? And we have this imbalance towards computer science, cryptography, and economics. Crypto economics, that's it. But we created this crypto economics flower, and until now, people, how do you call it? Validate or feel literally when people enter the token engineering Discord, most of them, or how do you call it? Not most of them, but there is this. Oh my God, I have never seen another place that resonated so much, right? Although it's a super complex, not an easy topic to enter. So the people are drawn to it, and they come from very, very different perspectives, and especially token engineering commons. The people I would say flocked onto token engineering commons have been especially more on the humanistic side. If we still say, or if we still see those two sides, like engineering heavy and humanities. And what we want is to not just open up, include, but also to really understand what was your view, although we might be from opposing sides of the crypto economics flower, what drew you here? And also, yes, what are the connections you see, like this whole connectivity, and having that annotation, having an annotation that makes those connectivity and association from each view or perspective, I think that's super valuable, and that's something for sure is missing in academia. Because you don't get credit, you're not rewarded in academia for actually doing multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary research. On the contrary, you always get slashed your publication points because there aren't any well-known conferences or journals on such difficult topics, and they mostly die out like cybernetics back in the day and so on and so forth. So actually super happy. And does anyone else want to add to those 2 points, like how are we going to create the library, or anything that came to mind when you are listening?
I would just have a footnote that I think one of the biggest obstacles right now in our fast-paced and attention deficit culture is that people don't find the time to actually read the books where the most knowledge is at, and they just get the highlights from a YouTube video. And so in that vein, there's also the possibility to, if we have a library, then there can be a natural language processing algorithm, and it can, crawl through certain book and derive the insights. I know there's actually a platform that does this. I'll look it up, but that you actually upload the book and it gives you like a bullet point with the main ideas. And I know they do it through NLP, so we don't have to do it from scratch. We can piggyback on these types of tools. But yeah, we would be getting insights from the books, and then we could, post them to the community. That would be like the middle point, because, people have a lot going on. They're working on 17 DAOs at the same time. So if we wanna make the most out of it, we would need some algorithmic help,
Yeah.
So what you described, Solsista, in terms of like why ethics in terms of gone the way of cybernetics and stuff, and to build on Mount Manu, is that almost every ethical dilemma that we face is always emerges in an organizational setting with some type of time constraint, and so the time available to look up that information and to gather information to propose solutions is very limited. And so I think that if we were to build something that has applicability and utility for actual members within DAOs, I think that we have to tackle that time constraint problem, and understanding that maybe really focus on the design framework or the design approach of how to educate people on how to make these find solutions for ethical dilemmas when they emerge in a time constrained system. I wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. Cool. So, and with respect, what it is, what can we do? What is the value? Like as Matt said, what is the value of this type of library and so on? If you want, I run it in my head, and it would be a nice exercise, and I think it's pretty quick, and it would also help us to map this in a way that people, when they see, library, another one, but they actually have a visual representation of, the value, like what is the value of it, who creates that value, like, people actually bringing in their subjective annotations, but also us as a community creating or using algorithmic tools to improve quality, etc. So this whole quality aspect. Mm, uh, but then also, what are the motivations, etc., that we could have a very small ecosystem value flows mapping of that library. Who will be the beneficiaries, who will be the supporters, why will they support, and all of this. I am guessing that through this work of mapping the library and so on, we will most probably also figure out better ways to actually connect to other resources when we are picking out those dilemmas and so on. So I think those two initiatives are going to really reinforce, be a good positive feedback loop. But in any case, and with that mapping, I think it will be quite, well, conceptually it will be simple, but I don't know if remember, but one of the earliest curation or token curated registries, etc., was for listing and so on. And such a library is actually really interesting. That we have a short list that is always new, up to date, and so on. But then also things that can be challenged. For example, when we say, okay, there's just 5 in that shortlist, just to get started quickly. But then new things can come into that shortlist, or from that shortlist, one of the resources can go into the long list, if you will, right? But will still keep its value attributes like the annotations and so on. And we could do an incentive and curation model, and also look whether we could. And now the question to the more active stewards, maybe token log could help in doing a small curation model. I don't know. Does anyone of the participants have more insights about the token log? And
I think token log is really useful if we have like multiple proposals or multiple ideas that we want to vote on, but it just depends on the use case. So, but token log is a good use.
Okay, so basically, I would definitely look into what can we reuse from the coordination tools or lists or forum that already works in Token Engineering Commons, that people have experience in using. But then for such an incentive curation model, if we ever reach the past the first 5, and there are actual people really caring and want to contribute, we could have this also as an easy, how do you call it, onboarding, if you will, to use all of the decision making or curation or signaling tools that we are currently using or that are being used out there. That's just an idea, but I would definitely, if anyone is up for it, basically we could do a system live flows mapping, because as far as I know, there have been, we could look into it, but there haven't been or there have been, like we already have an initial list of 3, 4. Some domains are empty and so on. But such a mapping would help us actually. Who else do we want to invite to curate the initial shortlist? And then we could look into tooling within tech that we can use. Yes, something like. Okay. And there is one thing that I think it's great that we have it as obvious or as transparent or something we are aware of. It's the source of knowledge. Like we start with oops. We basically start with the crypto economics flower, right? But that too shouldn't be dogmatic or too prescriptive. Just to show initial emphasis, transdisciplinarity. But I'm also curious, like there probably are also the view of participants who aren't necessarily academic or researchers and so on. Does anyone or can anyone add insights to that?
For example, the one I mentioned about like imaginary constructor worker, how he learned DAO space will be another topic. So another thing come to my mind, for example, let's say there's a poor woman. For example, in Canada, there's a community which is practicing actually solidarity economics, like grassroots economics. There are black women who don't have access to banks, so they are creating like their own common bank. But for example, they had problems with government, etc. Imagine that, for example, they decided to join using a decentralized finance tool, use like to escape government or like frauds of leaders, etc. So, for example, she map out 5 documents. She just entered how she decided to use DeFi for grassroots economics. Like there's a bunch of things like I believe we can learn from everybody. Like really,
Yeah.
yeah. For example, one of my favorite quotes from Noam Chomsky is that whenever they ask like who is the most intelligent person you have ever met, Chomsky, he always said the common man, because like everybody has doing something better. For example, my brother is an academic who really cannot cook. Like he even cannot cook an egg. Like for example, he said whenever someone cook good, he said it's amazing like how they incorporate those skills like hand and the taste, etc. So we really can learn from everybody. But so at that point there's a dilemma like what's the threshold like for so everybody can like throw a bunch of articles, it will be a mess again.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we can talk about like let's say democratic voting or like editorial review before democratic voting. I don't know like
Yeah, let's play with that a bit. I would say it's this whole curation model, and we can really start simple, but simple like upvote, downvote type of thing, and nothing gets ever completely off voted, but just goes into a longer list. But that we basically have this, how this top 5, if you will, right? The makeup of that could also change over time. Maybe we have times during which more practical sources And during crypto winter, we have more academic and more length resources. I don't know, but that would be definitely one thing just to be aware of.
For example, we can make a weighted reputation point. Like you will have 100 points. For example, in Reddit, whenever I want to click upvote or downvote, I feel like actually I don't want to click this like really a upvote, but 20% of upvote. So we can maybe do like weighted points.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I can imagine that becomes an interesting thing in on itself. Weighted. Hmm.
I think the crypto economic flower is it's too complex. It's helpful definitely to see all the different like the complexity and all the different things that go into the systems that we make. But I think it could be simplified into like this. Like it's like all of the ones from the flower. It's really just culture, legal or policy making, and the economic. And so
I like.
I think the current and if I can just show my
Can you
screen.
share? Yes, please.
Yes. If I can, you can see my screen. Uh, this symbol, I mean, it's something that has been present in many cultures throughout the, I mean, millennia. And I like this particular one because it's one line. And I think the problem right now in the world, if I was to simplify it to an enormous extent, would be that the economic dimension has,
Hmm.
through lobbying and cronyism, has
Yeah.
infected and corrupted the legal dimension, and both of them,
Hmm.
the economic and the legal together, have kidnapped the cultural one through the different types of arts and even like the music, which is so based on consumerism,
Hmm.
and it's just hollow um, for them to perpetrate themselves, right? There has to be a certain type of culture and the manufacturing of consent through mainstream media and other different mechanisms. And again, Chomsky deals with this very thoroughly. So I think it really helps to look at it that way. It definitely helped me when I first came into this three-folding type of structure, and
Hmm. Hmm.
it's another framework to add to our tool set.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah, I agree that basically those most practical three, four, I don't know, aspects like crypto economics, those two will definitely be there. But the third one, I guess it's what we're doing, like the culture, where does it play? Maybe the combination, or I always see the combination of, psychology, how do humans make decisions, then law, ethics, philosophy, like how does society norm that, um, those two parts, and basically that, in my view, is like becomes the whole of political science, more or less. But I agree that,
And like I think the red dot is like the Omega working group. It's like it's where ethics and philosophy and justice and all these things that have been discussed since times of Socrates and Plato and all these guys, Foucault and Chomsky. They deal with these things that are they're time dependent, time contingent, and they move on. I mean, Matt Mertzel shared with me a video about Chomsky saying how culture has changed. That in the Alan Turing, which is one of the most one of the smartest people ever lived and contributed greatly to computing, was actually killed by the British government, even though he was a war hero and an incredible inventor. He was given this treatment to cure, in their words, to cure his
Yeah.
you know homosexual tendencies. So, like, of course, right now that would be like it's not something that would happen right now. Like, culture has progressed in a way, ethically and morally, but history is not linear, so we can regress
Yes.
depending on the time. I think the current crisis that we've been seeing is a regression in a lot of fronts, and progress on other ones, because we are seeing how authoritarian structures are, and necro-capitalism is actually, how it affects. But that's what I'm going to say about that.
Cool. I haven't heard that before. Necro capitalism.
Yeah.
I agree to all. So thank you for synthesizing and conciliating. There is no other word, no better word in my view for it. And basically, I don't know how you feel, but this has become actually super concrete, and a lot of things to do. Not huge, we can chunk it up really, but I feel like it will have a lot of kind of meetings, not working meetings, but really the sharing of information, sharing like the models and so on. I'm wondering, or do you have insights how to best do that? Is GitHub, ZenHub, how Token Engineering Commons, the working groups have been mostly organizing their work? Will it be also something for this group, especially the ones who have been experiencing it in other working groups? What do you say? Is it accessible enough?
I like Notion.
To say okay.
Me wrong, but I'd be curious to see what other platforms people use outside of the TC.
Personally, I also like Miro, and I think it's visual. We can link from it to any other resource. Okay. I would literally try and map what we just put together on Miro. A literal map that we know, okay, this is happening here, this is happening over there, and maybe also hopefully we find more positive feedback loops between those two initiatives that we identified. And also feel like we can definitely update also the forum post. That's also something I'd like to do. No problem. What would be really good if you review the notes of the agenda in the agenda, that what we put together, and if you have basically any more concrete sources to the topics, that you just link them so I can put it on Miro, for example. That would be great. And yes, and for next week, just quickly, do you think, asking Manu, do you think it would be already good? Would you like to share next week already something about the capabilities approach?
Yes, definitely. I can. I'll work on something. Is there a Omega call next week, or on which call?
So the thing is, I'm feeling like we should move from bi-weekly to weekly, just because
Yeah,
we
me
have
too.
so many things lined up and not to lose the momentum.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think even symbolically, the biweekly gives the appearance that this is not as important as the other groups that are on a weekly basis. And
Yeah.
yeah, so again, symbolically, I think this is one of the most important working groups, but it's not as frequented by as like in comparison to others. So yeah, definitely, I'm all for moving it to a weekly.
Cool. Very good. Very good. Okay, then put it together in our call also for tomorrow. We make an update and we synchronize in the chat and through the documents during the week then. And if you have anything you want to spar on, please feel free to ping me, but also any of the other participants. I hope. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, Sebnem.